whakarongo ake au ki te tangi o te ao. E re runga rawa e. Tui, 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 tui a. Tui a he runga. Tui a hi raro. Tui a he roto. Tui a hi waho. Tui, tui, tui a. Ka rongo te pō. Ka rongo te ao. Tui, tui, tui a. Nō reira whānau, tēnei te mihi kia koutou katoa.
Well, tēnā koutou e te whānau. It is so wonderful to be here tonight. My name is Jess Bates, and it's really lovely to see you all. I just want to do a huge mihi atu ki a koe, Ellen, mō tō mihi, mō tō karakia, ai, me te kōrero hakahirahira, ai, me te hāpaitanga o te wairua o tēnei hui. So, tēnei te mihi ki a koe. Tēnā koe, tēnā koe. Isn't it fantastic that we can all come together like this? I know that COVID has been a huge part of 2020 so far, and we know that it will most certainly shape our future. So it's quite incredible, really, that we are all here at a live launch in the flesh, you know, quite perfectly able to sip our Chardonnays and eat our empanadas and breathe freely on one another without fear. You know? But I mean, we know that COVID is going to absolutely dominate the run-up to this election. And I think there's been so much debate about how we come out of this crisis, you know, what this new normal is going to be, but even more so, what is normal anymore? You know, none of us has escaped from COVID unchanged. So I think it's a really interesting moment. I kind of think that for lots of us, you know, we don't want to go back to how it was before, because we know that the before was riddled with problems, right? With inequalities, that there were people massively missing out, and there were people that actually couldn't fully participate in our society. And so what we actually need is some new ideas, some big ideas, so that we are not just rebuilding, we're rebuilding better, and we're not just going back to the old structure we had before. So that is what this election campaign is all about, how we can rebuild better from what was before. And so I think as a union, as the PSA, we are always extremely ambitious about our community and public services that our members provide. Not only that, but we want those services to be designed by and responsive to the clients and the users and the citizens that use them. And we want them to be great places to work, you know. But on top of that, we want to make sure that the community and public services are also really accessible to absolutely everybody. And we truly believe that changing those services in the ways they need to be changed is a way of rippling out to wider improvements for the rest of society, so that everybody in New Zealand is able to live the happy and healthy life that we all have a right to live. Yeah? Are you with me? Yes. Yeah, all right. So this is what the Aotearoa Wellbeing Commitment is all about. And this commitment is our challenge to the politicians to not just rebuild from the crisis, but to rebuild better. Yes. So with that said, we are very pleased to have so many of our members and our supporters here tonight, wherever you are coming from. It's amazing to see you. And even more so, we are totally lucky and fortunate to have this incredible, esteemed panel of individuals you see before you. So I might just take a hot minute to introduce them to you. And I think we've got a couple maybe coming through on the live stream that I can introduce in a second. But those who you see before you, we have the amazing PSA National Secretary, Erin Polaczuk. Can we give her a round of applause? Yes. We have Simone, who is a frontline worker, a PSA member, and was working on the front lines as a home support worker during the COVID crisis, which is incredible. Thank you, Simone, essential worker in the house. And we also have Amanda Larsson, who is a climate action and COVID recovery campaigner from Greenpeace. So can we give Amanda a huge round of applause? I'm aware that we also have joining us via Zoom shortly, the incredible Andrew Percy, who is from the Institute of Global Prosperity, and that's from the University College London. So he'll be coming in shortly, I'm sure. Hey, there he is. Hey, Andrew. We're just praising your name. And on top of that, we've got the amazing Max Rashbrooke, who is coming to us from Polaczuk from Wellington via Zoom as well. And he is a journalist, an author, and the 2020 JD Stout Fellow at Victoria University. Give it up for Max. Yes. Hey, and also a huge welcome and a thank you and no mai to all of those people at home who are joining us via the magic of the internet, via Facebook or YouTube. It is so wonderful to have you with us. So stay tuned. We're going to have an amazing night for you. So the format for this evening, just so you know, we are going to introduce what this campaign is all about. We're going to talk a little bit about what this big idea is, this universal basic services, which we are calling the Aotearoa Wellbeing Commitment. And then after that, we are very lucky to have the gorgeous Julia Deans in the house to be giving us her dulcet sounds for a hot minute. Yes, clap it out. Julia Deans, am I right? And then I will be handing over to our amazing campaign organiser, Brendan Lane, who is going to take us through this campaign and explain exactly how all of us can get this message out there. Fantastic. All right, well, I'm just going to duck back into this panel. So smoothly done, do you agree? So I'm just going to make sure that I've got my friend Andrew on the line. Andrew, are you out there?
Hi, Jess.
Hi.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, hi, I can hear you. I can't see you. Oh, there you are. Hey, Andrew, I was just going to start with you because I wanted to know where this idea of the universal basic services kind of comes from. Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, sure. And first, let me say thank you so much for the opportunity to help launch your campaign. It's really exciting to see these kind of ideas turned into political action. Universal Basic Services is a proposal we've been working on at the Institute for Global Prosperity at UCL for the last 5 years. Our first report came out in 2017. And what we set out to do was ask ourselves, what kind of arrangements does a modern 21st century society have to have in order to do three things: to maximize the potential of every citizen, to be able to actually afford to build what citizens cannot build for themselves, and then to do all of that within the boundaries of the planet. And so if we look at the current system in most developed countries, we see a combination of insurance schemes, conditional benefit schemes, and some public services that varies quite a lot between different countries. But we looked at what was failing and what was working across those, and what we found was that in where they have public services, the reach is much deeper, the costs are kept low, and in fact, they tend to have much lower carbon intensity. So for instance, our healthcare system in the UK, which is a public healthcare system, has much lower carbon intensity than the private system in the States. So we looked at that and said, well, could we take those ideas and extend them to other areas that are essential needs for citizens in a modern society? And we started off by looking at transport and information, by which we really mean, connectivity to the internet. And what we found is, sure enough, these same benefits actually apply across that. And in fact, if we look back in history where we've used these kinds of approaches for things like social housing in the past, they've been very effective at improving safety, opportunity, and participation in the populations. And there's an interesting effect here, which is that if you take costs that are basically unavoidable for people and you replace them with services, what you're really doing is delivering a social wage. You're actually boosting people's incomes in a way that is much more effective, especially at the lower end of the income scale. So not only are they effective in reaching people, low cost, but they help to boost people's incomes. So if we take that, what we did then as the next analysis was look at that and say, okay, if we take the same amount of money that we would spend on building out a free transport service or a free internet service, and we distributed that instead as cash to people, would they be able to achieve the same results? And what we found is, and partly because services flow sort of naturally to targeting the populations of people that need them, is that you cannot, with the amount of money that individuals would receive, you wouldn't be able to actually buy that same service. So we then sort of looked at this and compared it to another idea that's out there, and I think a lot of people talk about, which would be the basic income. And what we found was that a basic income at a level that's affordable does not make enough of a difference. It doesn't have a real impact on inequality. And in fact, it's quite difficult to design a very small basic income scheme that's any better than the conditional schemes that we have today. So the next step would be to look at it, well, if you had a really big basic income, and then that becomes really unaffordable. So it's almost impossible to design a solution there. But on top of that, and something that we found and a lot of people who've researched in the same area find, is that actually cash distribution has to sit on top of a set of public services in order to be effective. So if you had a really large distribution of cash, then almost certainly in most countries, you would have to look at taking money away from public services. And so it's a sort of catch-22. You can't really win that one. And we're much better off just focusing on developing and building the services. So the net result of all of this is that, you know, if you want these benefits of being able to reach properly into populations to satisfy basic needs, you have to sort of roll up your sleeves and actually build the service. And that's really where we've got to. We've now extended that research, and with Aotearoa, the New Economics Foundation, we're working on childcare and adult social care, and we're finding the same results there, which is basically if you build it as a service and you deliver it universally, you end up having much better reach and penetration, and you keep costs down. And very importantly, you can use then public money to influence the direction of the marketplace. So you can actually incentivize towards more climate sensitive solutions.
Okay, because you mentioned there the universal basic income, and I think that is the one that people will know more readily. You know, that's the kind of term. You go, oh, universal basic income. So you're talking about that not being effective on its own and needing the support of the services. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. It does.
Okay.
It doesn't work unless you have the basic services. All that happens is actually people take that income and then try and buy the same services in the marketplace, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Andrew. I'm interested in jumping to you, Max. Are you in the room?
I believe
Max.
I'm in the room.
Oh, okay, you're taking turns. I love it. Hey, hi, Max. I just wanted to check in with you and kind of see what you felt like the lockdown had revealed about how our society is currently functioning or dysfunctioning. I'll leave that up to you to define.
Well, and there's a lot of both, of course. I think lockdown both revealed things and created things at the same time. You know, the situation that we went into lockdown in, I mean, as you referred to, you know, the old normal had huge problems inherent in it. And one of those, of course, was economic inequality. In New Zealand, you know, we like to pride ourselves on holding world records, but one of the unfortunate ones that we hold is that between the mid-1980s and the mid-2000s, income inequality increased more here than it did in any other developed country. You know, we went from a situation where someone in the richest tenth of New Zealand might have earned 5 times as much as someone in the poorest tenth to a world where they earn 9, 10 times as much easily on average. If you think about the inequality of wealth, you know, who owns what, who doesn't own what, the wealthiest 1% of New Zealanders have over a fifth of all the country's wealth. In contrast, the poorest half of New Zealanders have less than 2% of all the country's wealth. So there are these enormous inequalities that we had pre-lockdown. And those were having all kinds of effects on society, of course, allowing some people at the upper end, enormous influence on politics, for instance, disproportionate influence, leaving many people in the middle of New Zealand just, struggling to stay ahead, struggling to stay afloat, and leaving a lot of New Zealanders in real poverty. Families not even being able to ensure that their kids have a raincoat or 2 pairs of shoes, that kind of thing. So we went into lockdown with all those inequalities, and then lockdown, of course, has just exacerbated them. Coronavirus generally has exacerbated them. During the lockdown, certain people, and I would include myself in this, were able to continue to work and maintain their income and live in reasonable comfort, whereas some people were trapped in really stressful situations with abusive partners. At the bigger level, we're seeing huge numbers of people becoming unemployed, massive demand at food banks, while conversely at the other end, the stock market, sort of defying all logic and sense, is holding up incredibly well. The wealth of a lot of people in that sense has been protected. Anyone who's got investments in supermarkets will be making record profits.
Right.
So, society was always structured by these kinds of inequalities, and I think and coronavirus has really just exacerbated them.
And it sounds like from the way you're talking about it that those will only keep unfolding. I guess I'm interested in why you think it's important for this election to look deeply at those inequalities.
Well, I think fundamentally these economic inequalities are always a question of politics. No matter what sort of economic or global forces are at work, it's always a question about how does politics respond to these kinds of challenges. And what I think is really important about, the idea of universal basic services, talking about in this context of the Aotearoa Wellbeing Commitment, is that it's a statement about wanting to ensure the collective success of society. There's that phrase, we're all in this together. Well, we're not really all in it together unless there's a genuine commitment through politics to ensuring that we are in it together, that the burdens are evenly shared, and that the support is delivered to those who've helped create the society that we work in. And that is the most vulnerable just as much as it is the most wealthy.
Yes, thank you. Speak on it. Yeah, I thank you so much for bringing that up, Max. I'm really interested, Andrew, in whether you think that this kind of deep inequality, this unfolding inequality is being seen elsewhere in the world.
I think that description applies in a lot of countries. It certainly applies here in the UK, that the combination of structures that we have, and particularly that we've emphasized in the last 40 years, have been shown to have very significant gaps, and COVID has opened those up, the pre-existing problems, and only made worse. What we've seen since 2007, and our report came out, and this is, I think, exaggerated and further influenced, evidenced by your campaign partly, right, by COVID, is growing political support for this idea of expanding public services. Last year, the UK Labour Party had universal basic services at the core of their manifesto, and they were advocating for free basic internet service across the country, amongst many other ideas in there. This year, we've had the President of Ireland specifically call for universal basic services in Ireland. And it's been very interesting to watch Joe Biden's campaign unfold in America. And just yesterday, they announced a $770 billion over 10 years for childcare and adult social care. So I think that these ideas are very much at the center of what people are looking at, and the major international institutions are encouraging. If you look at what the IMF or the World Bank is calling for in their advice to countries, they say, create a new social contract, build up your safety net, increase the resilience in your communities. Well, how do you do that? I mean, money alone is not sufficient. What you have to do is build capacity and capability in those communities.
Absolutely.
And that's what will allow you to survive, to do better in future crises. Because I think generally there's a recognition here that this has been a huge shock to the system, but we shouldn't expect that it's the only one that will come in our lifetimes. And a recent report from the UK government here said, well, you know, wow, in 10 years, we've had 2 major shocks to the world economy that have come. And they were both once in a lifetime or once in 100 years opportunities. But so maybe we were wrong about those, and we're going to have more of those kind of events happening to us. And so how do we build capacity and capability in our communities? And so, our feeling is that the way to build a new social contract is to roll up our sleeves and extend these public services. And as you mentioned, Jess, at the beginning, I mean, it's really important that we understand that these are locally designed. They're designed to fit in with the particular communities. So our sort of shorthand version of that is, raise the money nationally and spend it locally. And I think that's a really important aspect of universal basic services. It shouldn't be taken as a sort of old kind of the older welfare state idea of a big government kind of pushing down a set of services to local communities. I think it has to be the other way around. There are roles for national governments to ensure everybody has access and to raise the money, but much more important that this is designed and delivered to suit the particular needs of local communities.
So now is the moment, right? Now is the moment we can absolutely see that. Hey, I'm going to throw to Amanda here because I'm kind of interested in this. So they're talking about all of this existing inequality, right? And then COVID hits and we're suddenly a team of 5 million and we've got all of this rhetoric around rebuilding, but not too much of it seems to be talking about a climate change response. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I haven't seen any sort of really strong visionary plan either from the government or any political party for that matter that is looking at how we can use this opportunity of the rebuild after the pandemic to address the crises that, as Andrew was saying, are coming or are actually already here and affecting us, but will affect us more in future. And I think that's such a shame and such a missed opportunity because the work that we need to do to be able to address those challenges, so climate change and ecological devastation, that is work that is very jobs rich in a context where we're trying to create employment for people. So you can just imagine, putting in solar panels and insulation in hundreds of thousands of homes, or building wind turbines across the country, or building railways and cycleways, restoring nature, planting trees. This is really jobs-rich work, and it is work that will make us more resilient to future shocks, whether they are climate-related, whether they are pandemics, whether they are economic. So I think that's a real tragedy of vision at the moment, and I hope to see, as we get closer to the election, some more ambition coming out of our political parties and connecting these things. And I really love the idea of universal basic services because it does intersect climate change is a social justice issue as well as an environmental issue, and that's something we often overlook. And there's a real intersection in the sense that when people's basics are covered, they have the ability to look up and think about the other things that are affecting their community. So people have the ability and the time and the energy to fight to protect their children's future, treasured places that are at risk. So that's one aspect of basic services that I think intersects with climate issues. There's more obvious ones like having universal access to public transport. Obviously, here in New Zealand, road transport is our fastest growing source of carbon emissions. Yes. And so many people are without access to low carbon alternatives. So it's just such an obvious intersection of providing people with access to be able to commute comfortably and conveniently to where they need to get to, but also cutting our emissions dramatically. And when it comes to housing, similarly, having good quality housing makes you more resilient in the face of climate impacts. I'm thinking extreme heat, extreme weather, but also it cuts emissions at a time like when we use our energy most is sort of in the winter evening peaks, and that's when we're firing up coal and gas to meet that need. So there are so many intersections here, and I just think it's a bit of a shame that we haven't seen that realization from our political parties yet, but I think there is an opportunity. And, like I said, climate change is a social justice issue. Climate change is an inequity multiplier because it is the rich and privileged who will be able to shelter themselves from the impacts of climate change, and it is the people who are already marginalized who will suffer the brunt of the impacts, whether that's, a flooded home that you can't, afford to fix, or whether it's having to deal with higher costs of food because of drought and extreme weather and so on. So, I think there's so many opportunities in the COVID recovery to build back better, and I would really love to see some more courageous and visionary action from our political parties who are all asking for us to represent, to be our representatives in the coming election. So, let's put some pressure on them to do that.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess I'm interested in whether you think the Aotearoa Wellbeing Commitment is courageous and visionary enough by your...
I think it is courageous and visionary in this space. It sets a foundation, like I said, for people to look up and to be able to organize, whether it's in their personal life or in their community, to protect us from the crises that we can already see in front of us. There's more to do, one of the things that we as Greenpeace are really pushing for is transformation in the agriculture sector. So that's a different kind of work, but I think having a basic foundation for everyone to live is going to, have enormous benefits for the environment and for climate as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, thank you. I guess I'm interested too, Max, in whether we could put other lenses on this climate change issue as well.
Absolutely. I think, Amanda's has alluded to this already, but the intersections between inequality and climate change are so profound. We've just had research coming out in the last day or so that shows just how much are greater the emissions of wealthy people as opposed to the poor. And then you can tie that back into coronavirus. Who are the people who have spread coronavirus? Originally, it's the people who have got the luxury of being able to travel internationally. So all these kinds of challenges intersect in so many different ways. And picking up again on something that Andrew said, actually, we live in a world where there are all these shocks. And there always have been. But the nature of a globalized world and a globalized economy is that those shocks are transmitted so readily from country to country, and they can be climate shocks, they can be health shocks, they can be economic shocks. And, you have to be resilient to those, but there's no point expecting individuals by themselves to be resistant to these colossal tectonic shifts. The only organization that really is big enough to absorb these huge shocks, like a genuinely enormous shock absorber, is fundamentally government. And as Andrew alluded to, it has to be local and nimble in certain ways, but it is that big picture, that almost big beast aspect of government, that it has that power to absorb these shocks, that I think the Aotearoa Wellbeing Commitment really speaks to.
Thank you, Max. Hey, I'm going to jump in with you, Simone. Hi. Because I know that you were one of our essential workers, and that you were caring for your clients, and that you were breaking your bubble, and that you made huge personal sacrifices actually during lockdown. Huge, yes, and thank you for that. And I guess it's really important to have your perspective here, because I'd love to know what you saw on the front lines that the rest of us probably didn't see from the comfort of our lounges, and as a worker, but also as a Māori worker, what did you observe?
Kia ora koutou. He mihi nui kia koutou katoa, mō tō mahi tēnei pō, ne? Firstly, answering that, the experience that I felt was immediate fear, right? And it wasn't just fear from work, it was also fear from the community and just ngai Māori as well. You know, how do we protect, how do we look after, how do we show love, how do we do all these sorts of emotional things from such a huge distance? And then being that person that goes from A, home, B, home, C, home. It was like, it was really frustrating. For me personally, I wanted to protect my whānau, so I sent my daughter to my mum's house. So then I could just be like, if I got sick, then I can stay at home by myself, right? But that was just me. There was also other stories of people worried about how are they going to be in contact. And then what I found with working in the aged sector, the elderly had no concept of why they were by themselves, more so than before. They were baffled by it, and so I took on this little idea, how do I encourage their day, or how do I get them outside of their house, or how do I take them for a walk down the hot corridor, you know, and then I would put on a mask and I would make sure that they'll go for a walk with me, but you know, just making sure that I checked all the boxes, like with the nurse or with the organisers, like, hey, look, I think they need to get some exercise, but how do we do that? It was just taking on a lot more than what I was expected to take on. And then also, I found, afterwards there was no consultation. Like, do I want to work during this thing? No, because I'm under 70. You know, my daughter's 14, so, you know, she's okay. She's not a minor under 5 or anything like that. So I was just like, next time I'm going to try and figure out how I can introduce maybe a consultation process for us workers, especially on that front line. How do we actually instigate or promote better health policies for us to have PPE, to push forward access and continuous access, and not have to jump from one government application like the MOH or, you know, the HB kind of thing. So it was really scary, and transparency was a huge thing for us workers, or for myself as well. Like, continuously on my phone, hey, this happened, can you please check up on this? You know, it was hard.
Yeah, thank you for helping us time travel back to that moment, because I think it's quite easy now to forget that actually there was this moment where we all did feel quite a lot of visceral fear, and it must have been especially scary hearing your experience, having to send your daughter away and continue going to work and feeling like that you didn't get a choice.
That was the biggest thing. Like, I'll take on this whole, I'll be right, I can do this. You know, I'll just compartmentalise it all, you know, and I'll get back to it. But a lot of the time it wasn't like that at all. It was more or less like, I just have to do it. There's no if, buts or, you just do it. Yeah, you know? Right. And then you have that group of workers that have that just take it on the chin, and they'll just do it anyway without questioning. And I would be like, but don't you want to know why you have to work without being asked? And they'll look at me and like, just be quiet, man. Just carry on. Get the day done. Go home. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. You know. And then afterwards, after about 2 weeks, we thought social distancing, because we're always working together, how can we actually liven up our lives while we are together? So we thought, maybe we could have a picnic on the beach, but 1 metre apart, you know, but we work together, so we're in our work bubble. So how, you know, we were trying to work that through, but our timetables and schedules were so up and down. We didn't have that chance to kind of like meet up or connect or be in contact with someone that was, that we were working with. You know, this is coming from, you know, a community support worker, whereas I think other essential workers might have had a different way of coping, and there was always that thing where we'll look at another essential worker and we'll kind of like go, hey, you know, we'll look at each other, how you doing? Yeah. Yeah, and you could see they were scared. You can see that their response, if someone was like just breaking a tiny minor rule, that they would just pounce on it really severe, because they were internally fearful of the consequences. Yeah, and I got it, and so I just took it on and was like, yep, just go with the flow. Yeah.
So I'm interested in how you think, you're here tonight supporting the Aotearoa Wellbeing Commitment.
Yeah.
How do you think that could have helped in this space, or how do you think it could transform the kind of work and experiences you're having?
I think it could be an amazing opportunity for services, universal-based services, to be implemented in our working lives every day. It would just transform not only my life, but the people that I work with, but also my family. Huge. It would just you kind of like see that tunnel at the end, and there's that light beaming in. You'd see that, you can feel it. So that's something that I really look forward to. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Simone.
Anytime.
Okay, I'm gonna throw over to Erin now. So I don't know whether you want to pick up a mic, my friend, because you had the national perspective, didn't you, really, across the community and public services, and so your perspective on the lockdown would have been quite different again. What did you notice?
Thanks, Jess. Kia ora, everybody. I just want to say hi and talofa lava, and thank you for supporting all of this. I'm here as one of the National Secretaries of the PSA, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here and to sit alongside the experts and the people who worked during this amazing time, and all of the thinkers and doers, actually, in this space. So PSA has more than 75,000 members at the moment, which is really amazing, and many of our members were essential workers during the lockdown. So the breadth of work that they were doing was pretty amazing. They were probably doing stuff from advising politicians on the response to take, through to contact tracing, through to supporting people to live independently over that time, or maybe running Zoom consults if they were an allied health worker. Our members were doing all sorts of things out in society, and I think, Simone's alluded to some of the struggles, so trying to battle for PPE to do that kind of work was even a struggle. So it was amazing, and I think that community and public service workers just more than showed their worth to society through this pandemic. I mean, they helped with the response. They were always there doing this brilliant work for our society, but that really became visible during the pandemic, when many of us were in our homes and had the luxury of not having to go and work on the cold face, or so to speak, on the COVID face during that time.
Yes, amazing. So I guess that what you're saying is that there's kind of been a revealing of all of this work that has been happening all along, but suddenly we realise just how important that work is. Yes. So why do you think it's important that we kind of invest and engage in those services now?
Yeah, I think the time is right, because everybody now understands how important this type of work is, that how important public and community services are for us to not only thrive as a society, but to succeed and to battle anything that's thrown our way. So I think there's that. I also think that our members really appreciated the show of support, the applause that they got. But what they want more than that. They don't want a pat on the back or somebody to say thank you. They actually want the inequalities that existed pre-COVID to not exist. They want us to have a playbook for a better and fairer society. And the Aotearoa Wellbeing Commitment actually does that. It says our public and community services are important, but we can go deeper, we can go wider, we can start looking at universal, genuinely free healthcare, and services like internet and public services and education through from early childhood education all the way through the tertiary levels. Why not look at what we expect the state to provide for our society to thrive, you know. And I think it goes to the spirit of public service that's what our members are asking for, not, you know, for their pat on the back or for their pay rise necessarily, although that would be good. But, you know, they want a fairer society and a more equitable society out of this.
Absolutely. And I think that's Simone's point, right? Like that you have the right to ask for more, and you're asking for more not just for yourself, but for the users, that they are actually getting that equity and that justice at the receiving end. I just want to thank all of our panellists for their amazing expertise. Can we give them a wonderful round of applause? And I guess as you're talking, I'm kind of realising what strikes me about this particular commitment is it's got that beautiful quality of threading together all of those services that can become quite siloed, really, in the way that governments look at them. And it's so important that we draw them together, because then they become an active tool to actually be able to deal with the inequality and the social justice issues that are happening in our society.
Now, look, folks, I think before we get down to what we're actually got to be doing, I just want to acknowledge Melissa and Saul Bridges. Thank you so much for coming and representing the CTU tonight. It's wonderful to see you here. And we've got our president, Janet, and we've got our board members, Benedict and Megan as well. So thank you so much for coming along. And I just also want to say that it's been one of the things that I've really found amazing is that we've actually able to come together as a group of union members and have a launch. If you told me that back in March, that we'd be actually coming together and, as someone said, breathing on each other, then it's quite amazing in my mind that we can actually be here. But at the same time, it also gives us that opportunity that we've been talking about all night, about how we can actually rebuild better out of this. And so, you know, as a bit of a political junkie, you know, you listen to what the politicians say and how they say it, and there's a lot of, yeah, let's get back to normal. But we know that that normal isn't the greatest of places for a lot of people. And so this is what we're about. We're about trying to bring a new idea into the space and make it happen and give it some, challenge the politicians to really come up with something different. Now the problem we've got though is we don't have the hundreds of thousands of dollars of money that the politicians have to spend on advertising, radio, TV and all the rest of it. We don't have that. And we don't have the ability to have our politicians who've already got a lot of name recognition out there to pull in some media and have the press pack following them around. So we've got to think of different ways of getting our message out there and laying down that challenge for the politicians. So we're going to do it in three ways. All right? First way we're going to do is we're going to do social media. Lots of it. When you think you've seen enough of it, we're going to give you some more. When you think you've shared and tagged and done all the rest of it, we're going to give you some more. Because that is the next best thing we can do. If we can't pay for all the big advertising and things like that, the next best thing we can do is get our message out there on social media. So you're going to get sick of it, but please, folks, we've got to share the stuff and share it some more and then share it again. Okay? So that's number one. Number two, postcards. And you go, hang on, haven't you just talked about how we're going to do social media and make it all sort of like modern and digital and all the rest of it? Have you got one of those postcards there, Melissa? Just. We thought, well, we could get a big email petition going and we could get a whole lot of emails going to various politicians and all the rest of it. But actually, it's not very tangible. You know, it's like something just, you know, just in their inbox and you bet it goes to their junk folder. All right? So what we're saying is we want something physical. So what we're asking members to do, we've got 10,000 of these puppies to get rid of, all right? So what we're asking you to do is, on the back there, address it to the leader of the party who you think is going to form the next government, all right? You know us, we're down the middle, we're not advocating one way or the other, but the leader of the party who you think is going to form the next government, and then a little message in there about why you think it's a good idea, all right? We've got 10,000 of these, 10,000 to get in the mail bags of the leaders of the political party who you think is going to form the next government, all right? So that's job number 2, all right? And then job number 3 is enrolling people, all right? Because we have a big problem in this country. The big problem is that heaps of people don't actually enrol in the first place. And then secondly, when they do enrol, a whole lot of people don't even vote, which is like, oh, I just don't get that. But anyway, what we've got to do is we're going to do a big push on, first of all, getting people to vote, getting people enrolled. Secondly, making sure they've got a plan to vote. And thirdly, making sure it happens. All right. So you might think, well, how do we do all this? All right. We've got an amazing website, campaign website set up. And I just want to acknowledge Kristen and his team for Purpose for doing such a fantastic job setting up all our website and everything like that. So good stuff, mate. Yes. And I just also want to acknowledge the amazing design that we've got this campaign. And Isla, thank you so much for all your wonderful work that you've done with us. This stuff is just beautiful. Quite apart from the political importance of it, it's just stylish. You know, and that's what I really love about it as well. I also want to acknowledge Sam and Nat and Stephen for the wonderful work, Olivia for making sure that we get out to the people in internet land, and Jess, you're such a wonderful host. Thank you so much. Anyway, the most important thing we've got to do here is get this idea out there, all right? So we've got to share, we've got to make sure we get the postcard out there, and we've got to make sure that we're getting people to enrol to vote. So the website is no, I haven't told you yet, so I don't expect you to know. letsdoevenbetter.nz, okay? And all of this will be coming out to your email inboxes over the next day or so. I know that there's a little bit of pushback from members about how much emails we send out to you, but just make sure you read mine. So thank you so much. And as I said before, share, post, and enrol. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Give it up for Brendan Lane, campaign organiser. Oh, it is high, isn't it? Look, it sounds like there is a lot of mahi to be done, but I absolutely believe that we can do it. I'm so grateful to every one of you for coming out tonight and for all of the amazing people who have tuned in at home. It's been such a pleasure to have you with us. Can we give another huge round of applause to our incredible panel, to Max, to Andrew, to Amanda, to Erin, to Simone. Incredible. And another round of applause for Julia Deans. Yes. And huge mihi kia koutou to you all. Thank you for making such a beautiful night. I'm now going to hand over to Alan, our kaumatua, to Polaczuk before we get out there and do this mahi. Let's go. Yeah. Welcome back, Alan.
I'm a bit gobstruck, really. But I'll come back to our waiata there that we started off with. Whakarongo ake au ki te ao. Ki te manu o te e ana e. Look, I heard this song above me. And it said to me, tui, 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 tuia, come together and knit together there. Come and be of one. Tui ai runga. And kind of knit in a way that we kind of really collect our resources there to make an effect with those standards that are above us. And tui ai raro. And let's make the connection with where we are when we think about our ecology and think about our whenua, when you think about all those things there. Let's take some responsibility for what that means. Tui ai roto. Let's take some responsibility for ourselves. Let's gather all these things to kind of make some sense about that responsibility. And tui ai waho. And make an effect and gather up so that everybody that we kind of reach out there are all part of this song. So it's quite strange. This is what Kaumata would put out to us to start off with. And I just think it's so appropriate there that we kind of use this waiata to kind of sum up what Brendan has talked about, about what our panel has introduced, and about what we've all experienced just recently about COVID within our own families. Tui, 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 tui. Ka rongo te ao, ka rongo te pō. So let's understand it in our world. Ka rongo te pō. And let's understand it in those areas there that we don't know yet. So that's kind of really for me to finish off. Nō reira whānau, ku tama mātou. Ki te mutingo tō tātou hui nei, nō reira tēnei te mihi anō ki te hōhonu, te wairua, te mana ke roto tēnei kaupapa. Nō reira, he waiata nā tō tātou kaumata. We're going to sing this one, and the waiata really talks about sustainability and where we're moving with the campaign. And it's about our children there. It's about our children there that are kind of waiting to join the world there that we all kind of have an opportunity with. So I think if anybody else can sort of sing along with me, that would be good. It's about Te ro, kei hea koe, kei hea kei runga koe, kei laro kei roto I taku moia. Nō reira kia tau, kia tata katoa, te ata whai, o tō tātou araki, a ihu kraiti, me te aroa o te atua, me te whiwhina taitanga, ki te wairua tapu, ake, amen. Kia ora mai.
Well, I hear there's still some food available out there. So, by all means...